In Russia, in the mid-1800s, the Romanov dynasty was shaken by a strange love story. Nicholas, the eldest son of Emperor Alexander II, was heir to the throne. He wanted to marry the beautiful Princess Dagmar, daughter of the King of Denmark. Dagmar was a sweet and gentle young woman whom her family affectionately called Minnie. And yet, Nicholas's early death put an end to their future plans. It was his younger brother, Alexander, who would inherit the throne. For diplomatic reasons, or perhaps on his deathbed, Nicholas had asked him to wed his fiancée. Alexander did marry Dagmar despite being in love with someone else. But what was a moral obligation gradually turned into love. And once crowned Emperor of Russia, Alexander dedicated much of his life to Dagmar's happiness, after she became Empress of Russia under the name Maria Feodorovna. One year, as an Easter gift, the emperor gave his wife a hen egg. The first in a series of legendary jeweled eggs, which marked the history of the Romanovs until their fall, and which brought fame to the jeweler Carl Fabergé. In 1685, Louis XIV had chased Carl Fabergé's Huguenot ancestors out of France. A century and a half later, Carl's father, Gustav, opened a modest jewelry firm in St. Petersburg in Russia. From its very founding, St. Petersburg became a city of every dream and every desire. St. Petersburg, a symbol of the ambition of the Tsar Peter the Great, who in 1703 decided to establish on the mouth of the Neva River a new capital out of nothing, a capital open towards the west. A city constructed by architects come from Europe. To people his city, the Tsar ordered aristocrats and wealthy bourgeois to leave Moscow and come here to build sumptuous palaces. And to establish themselves in a place where in winter, everything is covered in snow and ice. And in summer, the sun never sets. Over the decades, St. Petersburg had become an elegant city that rivaled the major capitals of Europe. With the return of fine weather, parties and balls resumed. Like the aristocracy, the bourgeoisie also had fun and danced till they were out of breath. No expense was spared, and the top jewelers embarked on a creative battle to attract a wealthy, demanding, and often whimsical clientele. The joyous works of Fabergé could only be born in this city. In 1861, in order to complete his son's training, Gustav sent Carl on a grand tour of Europe. He discovered the great jewelry houses and visited the major museums of Frankfurt, London, Paris, Rome, Florence, and Naples. Soon after his return to St. Petersburg, Carl began working with the Hermitage Museum, where he studied Scythian artifacts discovered during archaeological digs in Crimea. The family workshop began producing copies of this exceptional jewelry. Carl tried to establish relations with the imperial cabinet. He knew that contacts might open the door to prestigious orders. often linked to the history of the empire and the life of the Romanovs. In 1866, for the wedding of Tsarevich Alexander and Princess Dagmar, the imperial cabinet called on the House of Fabergé. When Karl took over the firm, its production was fairly ordinary. But the young jeweler's talent, coupled with fate, would create the conditions for the house's success. On March 13, 1881, Tsar Alexander II was the victim of an assassination attack and died from his wounds several hours later. The Tsarevich Alexander succeeded him under the name of Alexander III. The new imperial couple would play a major role in the saga of the House of Fabergé. At the 1882 Pan-Russian exhibition held in Moscow, the copies of Scythian jewelry were noticed by the Tsar. Fabergé was awarded the gold medal. The House of Fabergé was a family business. Karl was joined by his younger brother, Agathon. The qualities of the two men complemented each other. Agathon was overflowing with creativity, and Karl was a visionary entrepreneur. Together, they would diversify the firm's production, enter the gift industry, call on the creativity of designers from various workshops, and manufacture stunning objects, thus reshaping the entire jewelry market. In Russia, Easter is the most important Christian holiday. The Eastern Orthodox Church marks the event with more pomp than for any other religious festival. The egg is the symbol of the resurrection of Christ. In 1885, Alexander III placed an order with Karl Fabergé for a gift for his wife. He wanted to give her a very special Easter egg, what would become the historical hen egg. Fabergé designed a gold egg covered in a fine coat of white matte enamel. It measured just over 6 centimeters long. It opened to reveal a number of surprises. Firstly, a gold sphere, then a hen with finely carved feathers made in different colored golds. The eyes were encrusted with rubies. Inside, the hen concealed a tiny imperial crown and a ruby pendant, both of which have been lost or were stolen after the Revolution of 1917. The treasures of Fabergé aroused envy and desire. The Empress Maria Feodorovna was so overjoyed that Alexander informed Fabergé that for every Easter, he should deliver a different egg. The years of the imperial couple and those of the nation would thus be punctuated and symbolized by these gifts. The Renaissance egg of 1894 was a kind of macabre omen. The last gift Alexander would make to his darling Minnie, because later in the year, he would die of kidney failure. Legend has it he was stricken with the disease after the derailing of the imperial train. The Tsar supposedly held up the roof of the imperial car to stop it from crushing his family. The Renaissance egg is a symbol of eternity. It's carved in milky agate on a gold and polychrome enamel base. 2 lions' heads adorn the extremities. The shell is mounted with precious stones. The year 1894 is encrusted on the top in diamonds. The surprise it contained has disappeared. Fabergé's invoice mentions pearls. Perhaps there were a necklace and a bracelet inside. Another hypothesis involves the resurrection egg. This figure of Christ with two angels may have been contained within the Renaissance egg. The subjects are coherent, but the two pieces don't fit together perfectly. On the death of Alexander III, his son became Nicholas II, Emperor of Russia. The new Tsar continued the tradition and even amplified it. Every year, he commissioned one egg for his Tsarina, Alexandra, and one for his mother, Maria Feodorovna. In a country where the winters are endless and the colors of town and country are masked by snow, the sight of flowers is comforting. They were also a source of inspiration for the designers of the House of Fabergé. And so it was that in 1895, Nicholas presented his wife with the rosebud egg, a work in the Louis XVI style. The shell is in guillocheted gold, coated in enamel, and decorated with garlands of gold leaves and diamond arrows. On top of the egg, an imposing diamond covers a portrait of the Tsar. On the bottom, another diamond covers the date of the gift. Inside, the Empress discovered a yellow rosebud, a symbol of love. The diamond arrows are, of course, those of Cupid. The jeweled egg expresses all the passion the Tsar felt for his wife. The lily of the valley, symbol of youth and purity, was the Tsarina's favorite flower. In 1898, Fabergé gave Easter a touch of Art Nouveau. And Nicholas II presented his wife with the lilies of the valley egg. The shell is covered with translucent pink enamel. It's marked with vertical lines. The buds are pearls, and the petals are cut diamonds. The egg surprise is at the top, a three-leaved clover of portraits, of Nicholas and of the couple's two first daughters, Olga and Tatiana. To cope with the increasing orders, Carl Fabergé was obliged to look beyond his own workshops and develop a complex network of exclusive partners, subcontractors, and suppliers from among the host of established jewelers in the city. He chose the best talents and hundreds of craftsmen who would contribute to the making of his treasured artworks. Some work masters were crucial. Among them, Franz Bierbaum, an excellent designer and an innovative technologist. Years later, he took the time to write his memoirs, in which he explained how Fabergé managed to increase his firm's production without affecting its creativity. He wrote,
"The Fabergé brothers had too much work and could not run their workshops in the proper manner. So they decided to set up independent workshops to work solely on the house's designs.
Once organized, the brothers diversified production and targeted other markets. Carl Fabergé was driven only by the quest for the beauty and originality of an object. In an interview with a fashionable magazine, he stated,
"An object of value is of no interest to me if its price lies in its abundance of pearls and diamonds."
It was the same principle as for a work of art. The price of a painting isn't the addition of the cost of the canvas and oils. The value of a work depends on more complex, more subjective criteria. The Fabergé workshops made the most out of the beauty of semi-precious stones and enamel. The perfection of the enamels was one of the house's signatures. To make them, Karl hired the city's top workmasters. Together, they experimented with transparencies and colors. He made infinite variations of designs on guilloché bases. Guilloché is the delicate, regular engraving of undulating lines. The coats of transparent enamel on guilloché gold or silver play with the light and produce endless, stunning reflection effects. The house offered more than 100 different colors from which customers could choose. Fabergé also learned how to play with the beauty of semi-precious hardstones mined from deposits in Russia, notably in Siberia and the Ural Mountains. In his memoirs, Franz Bierbaum notably cites nephrite, which is found along the banks of the Onat River in eastern Siberia, a green stone with infinite chromatic variations. Rhodonite for inclusions of bright pink. Topaz with its tawny transparencies. The deep blue of lapis lazuli. The elegant violet of amethyst. The different types of quartz whose rock crystal entails such delicate work, and many other marvels. The sculpture workshop used all the masterpieces of nature. Fabergé gave nobility to all these materials, which he used to make useful or decorative accessories to please his privileged clientele. But his objects also marked a rupture between the ruling elite in search of beauty and pleasure and a country which, during the last decades of the 19th century, was plunged into social crisis that was particularly cruel on the Russian people. Fabergé's customers appeared to flee from this reality and seek the insouciance of childhood. The jeweler invented playthings for adults, which brought messages of goodwill and crystallized the memories of happy moments. The jewelry itself expressed a playful fairy tale world. In the universe of Fabergé, animal sculptures had a place of their own, bringing a touch of fun and amusement. Their color was determined by that of the stone they were carved in. On this, Franz Bierbaum wrote,
"These miniature sculptures met with great success. They made excellent gifts when it was important that the prices were not too high.
By producing more and more unique pieces, Fabergé provoked fetishist impulses and passions among collectors. You have to look deep into psychological mechanisms to begin to understand people's attraction to these small totems. Notably the statuettes, which are composed of adjusted semi-precious stones. They're often of popular figures, like soldiers or peasants. Some gifts were extremely refined and expensive, like this basket of lily of the valley. Or these delicate pansies standing in a glass of water sculpted in rock crystal. The St. Petersburg jeweler played with the desires of the elite, and the designers of the house imagined all kinds of everyday objects whose aesthetics often outweighed their purpose. They offered a vast choice, a poetic inventory made up of clocks, desk ornaments, pad holders, glue pots, hairpins, perfume bottles, manicure sets, opera glasses, cane and parasol handles, spyglasses, purses, belt buckles, desk bells, and so many other creations. While the Imperial Eggs continue to draw the most attention, the sheer quantity of the House of Fabergé's works is often ignored. In its first 30 years of business, its workshops made more than 200,000 different objects. More important pieces were also sculpted in semi-precious stone, like this platter in nephrite. With its Rococo-style handles, with strawberry red enamel bordered with gold. It was presented as a wedding gift by Nicholas II to Crown Prince Wilhelm of Germany and his bride Cecily, Duchess of Mecklenburg-Schwerin. Cigarette cases and semi-precious stone were also much appreciated gifts. Nephrite was also used in the making of the Imperial Eggs. In 1911, when Maria Feodorovna celebrated the 30th anniversary of her accession to the throne, her son Nicholas II presented her with the bay tree egg, a tree whose fine, shimmering leaves were delicately carved from strips of nephrite. The foliage is dotted with pink and yellow stones, amethysts, and citrines. The base is in nephrite. The date and Fabergé's signature are particularly visible. Maria Feodorovna loved birds. When the mechanism is started, the top of the tree rises to reveal a bird with real feathers that begins to sing. The bay tree was one of the Imperial Eggs most coveted by collectors and admirers of Fabergé. It has passed through numerous pairs of hands, notably those of the American billionaire Malcolm Forbes.
This is the orange tree egg. It's one of the most famous. If you push that, the little bird's supposed to sing, but naturally on TV it's shy.
It's now on display at the Fabergé Museum in St. Petersburg. the jeweler made a multitude of objects for the Tsars to offer as gifts to their entourage, to mark great events, or to forge diplomatic relations. Very often, the emperor's monogram, the imperial family arms, and even the Tsar's face reinforced the symbolic dimension of the gift. Because a gift from the emperor was naturally much more than an object. A gift is a charm bearing some of the power of the giver. It's a sign of distinction, of friendship, of recognition, of affection. The Dowager Empress Maria Feodorovna actively promoted Fabergé's works. To her sister Alexandra, Queen of the United Kingdom, she introduced all the charm of the house's animals in semi-precious stone. In her palace at Sandringham, Alexandra built up a collection of more than 200 pieces, known as the Royal Menagerie. And the elite of London society followed in her wake. Fabergé then decided to open a London branch, which would meet with great success. But the relations between Fabergé and Maria Feodorovna were much more harmonious than with the Tsar's wife, Alexandra. When describing the new Tsarina, Franz Beerbaum was harsh.
Her knowledge of artistic concepts was limited, and her greed was one of a petty bourgeoise. Her orders were accompanied by sketches and preconceived ideas concerning the prices. She often put Fabergé in tragicomic situations.
Alongside this all-powerful Russian aristocracy, a large industrial and commercial bourgeoisie grew up. Because in the 1880s, the country committed to a vast industrialization policy and developed a network of railroads that led to a boom in trade. Russia notably launched the construction of the Trans-Siberian, a train destined to link the cities of the empire from east to west. The Trans-Siberian is the longest railroad in the world. It covers more than 9,000 kilometers and calls at almost 1,000 stations. Its construction lasted 9 years, costing many lives and millions of rubles. But the train was also a symbol of national unity and altered the perception of Russian space. In 1900, Fabergé designed the Trans-Siberian Railway egg in silver and green guillocheted enamel. The lid is mounted with a heraldic eagle wearing the imperial crown. A map of Russia is engraved on a wide strip of silver. It shows the route of the train from Moscow to Vladivostok. The egg is supported by 3 griffins. The surprise inside the egg is a miniature of the train folded into 3 sections. The locomotive is accompanied by 5 cars, one of which is a chapel. Fabergé inserted a spring mechanism which can be wound up to run the train. Nicholas II was crowned emperor on May 14, 1896. He made a triumphant entry into Moscow on a white horse, followed by 2 coaches containing his wife, Alexandra Feodorovna, and his mother, Maria Feodorovna. The festivities lasted several days. The coronation took place in the Dormition Cathedral. A massive crowd filled the streets and the outskirts of the city. The day was marred by a stampede that resulted in more than 1,000 deaths. Fabergé dedicated one of the most famous eggs to the ceremony. The Imperial coronation egg is coated with translucent, brilliant yellow enamel over guilloche'd gold. It bears the imperial emblem of the 2-headed eagle in black enamel. The Empress's monogram is inscribed on the top. And on the base, the date is covered with a pink diamond. The egg contains a surprise: the copy of the coach in which Alexandra made her entry into Moscow. The miniature 9-centimeter coach rolls and turns. The door opens with a tiny gold handle, and a footstep appears. The windows are carved from rock crystal. The work is stunning in its virtuosity. In the years that followed, Nicholas II ruled Russia, but he gave a privileged place to his family. A few months after his marriage, he had written in his diary, "With Alex, I am immensely happy. A pity that state affairs take up so much of my time. I would prefer to spend these hours with her." While the Romanovs impatiently waited for an heir to the throne, in 6 years, Alexandra gave birth to 4 daughters. Then finally, a boy, the Tsarevich Alexis, born in 1904. But he was a hemophiliac, and the fragile child had a short life expectancy. The imperial entourage showed him all the respect due to a future Tsar. But they all knew he would never sit on the throne. He accompanied his father to numerous official events, but fatigue meant he often ended up in the arms of a Cossack. The slightest bump or bruise, without consequence for any other child, caused him great pain and to bleed profusely, putting his life in danger. So everybody treated Alexis with the utmost caution. It was the paradox of the solitude of a well-surrounded child trying to have fun, but unable to join in childhood games. To brighten the Tsarevich's days and to amuse him, Fabergé produced a stunning silver rhinoceros. In 1911, a new Fabergé egg marked Nicholas II's years on the throne, the 15th anniversary egg. The egg, in guilloche'd gold, is coated with white enamel and plates of ivory, painted and covered with rock crystal. The surface is divided into 18 sections outlined in green enamel and diamond crosses. The minuscule paintings are finely executed. Portraits of the Tsar, the Tsarina, and their 5 children stand out from the white background. The other paintings are of important events and places in the political life of the Tsar over the previous 15 years. The egg contained no surprise. The imperial family's commissions aroused interest in new customers from the aristocracy and the worlds of finance and industry. Some of them wanted Easter eggs too. There weren't many of them, but they were extremely wealthy. Franz Beerbaum in particular appreciated them.
I must admit, it was by far easier and more agreeable working for the kings of the stock exchange, oil or sugar. They all had a sense of the practical and never boasted artistic initiatives.
The mega-rich Consuelo Vanderbilt, daughter of the American king of the railroads and wife of the Duke of Marlborough, asked Carl Fabergé to design an egg for her. In 1902, the House of Fabergé delivered an elegant egg-shaped clock coated with a delicate pink enamel, around which winds a snake studded with diamonds. The snake's tongue tells the hour on the lid fitted with clockwork. The top of the lid is crowned with garlands in gold of 4 colors. The snake is the symbol of steadfastness and marital fidelity, hardly in line with the couple which was soon to break up. The Duchess later donated it to a charitable institution. The jewel ended up becoming the first egg in Malcolm Forbes's collection. Another extremely wealthy customer was Alexander Kelch. His mega-rich in-laws controlled Siberian gold. He commissioned Easter eggs for his wife, which he hoped would be as sumptuous as those of the Tsars. In 1898, Fabergé delivered to Varvara Kelch a new version of the hen egg. Kelch's egg was larger than the imperial version. It's coated in a ruby-colored guillochette enamel. The inside of the egg is in natural colors, brilliant white and matte yellow. The surprise is a hen, completely painted in enamel. Inside the hen is another surprise, an easel encrusted with diamonds. In 1887, Fabergé opened their branch in Moscow. Then followed Odessa, London, and Kiev. At the height of business, the house employed more than 500 people. The Moscow branch was a triumph. The store had one workshop dedicated to silverware and another to jewelry. The company catered to a different clientele than that of St. Petersburg. The Moscow bourgeoisie was much more attached to traditional Russian culture. Franz Beerbaum noted,
"The first thing that distinguishes Moscow Fabergé articles from St. Petersburg ones is the predominance of the Russian national style.
The Moscow and St. Petersburg workshops produced sumptuous pieces in silver. Muscovite designers also created objects decorated with richly decorated cloisonné enamel. The romantic scenes were often reproductions of works by famous artists. At the turn of the 20th century, the Russian style began to adopt elements from Art Nouveau. To meet the demand, Fabergé decided to rationalize the house's production methods. On Bolshaya Morskaya Street, he constructed a vast building in pink-gray granite, inaugurated in 1900. It allowed him to gather under one roof the majority of his workshops and craftsmen, until then spread all over St. Petersburg. Grand dukes and duchesses loved to visit and would spend hours choosing their objects. The advent of the 20th century and the World's Fair in Paris marked the peak of Fabergé's career. In the Russian pavilion, Fabergé was allocated one display case. It was a total triumph. He was awarded a gold medal and decorated with the Legion of Honor, the highest distinction of the French Republic. To celebrate the new century and the years ahead, Fabergé designed for the Empress Maria, Nicholas II's mother, a particularly elegant egg clock in the Regency style, the cockrel egg. The round clock is coated in white enamel. The numbers on the face are studded with diamonds. The arrow-shaped hands are in gold filigree. The clock face is crowned with laurel wreaths studded with pearls and diamonds. A fairly large trellis with acorns is completed by garlands of hanging fruits and berries. The surprise is a crowing cockerel. The lid opens, and it appears from the top of the egg. In 1904, Fabergé delivered to Alexander Kelch another egg called the Chanticleer, heavily inspired by the cockerel egg. (1904 and 1905 were dark years for the imperial family. On February 8, 1904, Japanese torpedo boats attacked the Russian fleet anchored at Port Arthur. The ensuing war saw 2 million men clash. The conflict would end on September 5, 1905, with Russian defeat. During the 2 years that the war lasted, the ritual of imperial Easter eggs was suspended. These years grew darker still for the Romanovs. Revolt began to brew among the peasants, as life in the countryside was frequently hit by famine. And in the cities, the workers began to organize mass strikes. The first uprising broke out in St. Petersburg on January 9, 1905. Nicholas II was forced to agree to a constitution guaranteeing basic freedoms and an elected parliament, the Duma. In 1913, the Tsar launched festivities to mark the 300th year of Romanov rule in Russia. Fabergé was honored with his biggest ever official commission. This sumptuous occasion was the last before the apocalypse. In August 1914, World War I broke out. Through a combination of alliances and treaties, Russia was plunged into the conflict. The Russian army quickly suffered huge human losses. The Tsar headed to the front to take charge of his men. Despite his personal involvement, Russian troops were forced into a retreat that proved catastrophic. The Fabergé workers left for war. Women took their places at the workbenches to make equipment and munitions for the Russian army. Among other supplies, they delivered 2 million bullets. But the tradition of Easter gifts continued, and the egg offered to Maria Feodorovna in 1916 was a reference to military glory. The Order of St. George egg is extremely sober. The ivory color enamel shell is dotted with crosses, which seem to rise from the mist. It's adorned with a ribbon and 2 medallions representing the cross and the medal of St. George. These can be lifted to reveal the portraits of Maria Feodorovna's son and grandson. The egg is of great beauty in its simplicity. In keeping with the austerity of the time, it's not brimming over with gold or precious stones. In 1917, revolution broke out. Soldiers lined up alongside the insurgents. The army abandoned the Tsar, who was forced to abdicate. In October, revolutionary forces seized power. On July 17, 1918, the imperial family was summarily executed. The man who had sowed so many precious stones on the Romanovs' path disappeared with them. Carl Fabergé left Russia for Lausanne in Switzerland, where he died soon after in early fall 1920. He was buried in Caen, in the French soil from which his ancestors had been forced to flee 2 centuries earlier. In Russia, the fledgling Soviet power, in need of gold and foreign currency, sold off the imperial treasures. Fabergé objects were dismounted to retrieve the gold and precious stones. Tens of thousands of the jeweler's works also left in the suitcases of Russians fleeing into exile, who tried to survive by selling precious objects. A market would open up for these jewels, which drew high media interest.
Tragic irony attaches to this collection of treasures now being offered for sale in New York, for these were the gifts of the last Tsar of Russia to his Tsarina.
The American billionaire Malcolm Forbes, in a race in the form of an ideological conflict, wanted to own more Fabergé eggs than the Kremlin.
It's always fun to beat the Kremlin in a competition if it's not nuclear.
In 2004, Malcolm Forbes' heirs put the collection up for sale. Before the auction, the Russian businessman Viktor Vekselberg managed to acquire the entire collection. His Link of Times Foundation bought scattered works to bring them back to their country of origin. These days, the Fabergé Museum, housed in the Shuvalov Palace in St. Petersburg, offers visitors a sumptuous collection of more than 1,000 pieces. But this epic tale doesn't end there. A drawing exists of a final planned Fabergé egg, destined for the Tsarina Alexandra in 1917. It was never finished due to the fall of the empire, but a few important elements of this egg were found in the Mineralogy Museum in Moscow. The egg is in midnight blue. The constellations of the day of the Tsarevich Alexis's birth are engraved on the dome. It seems to suggest that the fate of the young heir to the throne was already written in the heavens on the day he was born. The egg rests on opaque rock crystal clouds. The initial drawing planned for the presence of cherubs in silver. This prophetic work is all the more moving as it is incomplete.
Oh,